Today I'm going to show you my very easy, very tasty focaccia. My version of focaccia, really simple, just a few ingredients. I'm going to be starting with 200 grams or a cup and a half of King Arthur all-purpose flour, which is an 11.7% flour, really close to a bread flour. You can use bread flour if you want to, perfectly fine. I like to do an 80% hydration on this because I have a little twist to it. I don't need the dough. I do stretch and folds instead, and I'll show you that in a little bit. So 80% hydration comes to 160 grams of pretty warm water. It's not hot water, just warm water. 160 grams is about 2/3 of a cup of water, okay? Then we want to add our salt. Now for this, it's a little bit saltier than a regular bread because, you know, focaccia is focaccia. And I'm going to use 6 grams, which is a nice rounded teaspoon. And one of the things that makes focaccia is olive oil. There's actually a significant amount of olive oil in here. I have found a 5% ratio of olive oil using baker's math to my flour to be the right amount. Don't let that scare you. That means I have a 200 gram amount of flour, so 5% would be 10 grams, which comes to about 2.5 teaspoons of olive oil. For this, you want to break out the good stuff. You want to use extra virgin. It doesn't have to be like, you know, $1,000 a bottle good stuff, but pretty decent olive oil is what you want. And last but not least, our yeast. Now you can bloom this if you really want to. I haven't really found a need to. This is just Fleischmann's active dry yeast. You can use instant yeast, active dry, whatever you like. This is going to be about a rounded teaspoon, which is also somewhere in the neighborhood of about 4 to 5 grams. We're using a bit more than we might for some breads because this doesn't actually have a really long ferment. While you can ferment this much longer, people put it in the fridge and let it ferment for days. We're doing this a little bit quicker. This will be ready in no time. And now we mix. Just want to get all the dry lifted up. Some interesting things about focaccia though. People think it's the start of pizza. It's actually not. There is a Sicilian bread that's more like a Greek pita that is actually believed to be the start of pizza. And if you think about it, the words actually work well together too. Whereas focaccia is from fugazi, which is actually an old unleavened flatbread from the Etruscan era. So it's like 2,000 plus years old. Stuff like that just fascinates me. I love it. Now, everybody and their brother and their grandmother and their mother has a version of focaccia that they think is the best. This is just mine. It is a culmination of many recipes, many trials and errors, many things that I saw on the internet, and it turns out to be really easy for us to make, really convenient. We store it in the fridge for a few days and pull it out when we want to, and it really doesn't take long to make at all. Just while I was talking, I mixed it all. Let that rest 5-10 minutes. See you in a bit. Okay, our dough's been sitting for about 10 minutes, and that's about when I like to start doing stretch and folds. Now, stretch and fold is a really simple thing. It's a way to form gluten in the bread without having to get into kneading and getting all messy and gloopy. This bread requires 3 stretch and folds. I usually do them about 10 minutes apart, so no big deal, half an hour. Let me show you how we do them. Get some water on your hand, and I'm going to tip the bucket to the side so you guys can see. I'm going to reach in, grab an end, stretch till I feel resistance, and fold it on top of itself. Just like that. Turn 90 degrees, repeat the process. Get in there, stretch, and drop it on top. Push it down a little bit so it stays. Same thing, just like this. Little stretch and over. You can already see this is starting to change. The dough itself is totally changing into something a little bit more slick, a little bit more supple, more smooth. That's exactly what you want. Come back in 10 more minutes, do it again. I'm not going to show you the other 2. I'll just show you once we get to that point, okay? But remember, you want to do 3 stretch and folds on this particular bread. Okay, so 2 stretch and folds are done. I'm just going to do the last one real quick while we're talking here. And what you want to do at this point too is check on what you actually want to cook this in. You have a variety of options. You can use the old glass pan, you know, like a Pyrex pan. You can cook it in a metal sheet pan. I actually like to use my 10-inch carbon steel skillet. It seems just the perfect size, makes the bread about that thick. Nice and spongy, great texture, crunchy top and bottom, works wonderfully for us. Something about that size for this exact recipe though is really what you want to do. But anyway, now I am done with the stretch and fold. Put my lid back on. This will sit for 1 hour, an hour and a half. You want this to bulk proof, okay? It's just like any other yeasted bread. The gluten's been formed, it's silky smooth. Now we just let it rest for a while. All right, so our dough has been sitting for roughly an hour, and as you can see, it has risen a lot. That's the idea. You want it to do that. If it doesn't look like that, let it go just a little bit longer, but it probably shouldn't take too long. Right now, I want to set my oven to 450 degrees Fahrenheit. The Celsius will be in here. Now, I use 450. I've tried it at 400. I've tried it at 350. I found 450 to be the best. Got the crunchiest crust top and bottom with the nice spongy interior. It was awesome. The actual vessel that you cook in isn't super critical, but this is a flatbread style bread, right? What that means is it's cooked flat rather than as a loaf intended to rise up. However, mine get to about that high most of the time. We like it that way. Makes great sandwiches. You take the, I'll get into that later. But basically, I love the carbon steel pan for this. Can you use cast iron? Yes, absolutely. I've used my cast iron. This 10-inch pan, so get a 10-inch cast iron if you want to use cast iron, covers this perfectly, okay? It is the exact right size. So that's the way I'm going to do it. Now comes the part that separates focaccia from almost every other kind of bread. The closest thing that I've seen to this is actually deep dish cast iron pizza. It's the closest thing to this. What I'm going to do is drop some oil in. Now, how much? That's probably 2 tablespoons of oil in there. And don't get worried. You almost can't put too much oil into a focaccia. It's like the defining ingredient of a focaccia. So there's oil in it. It's going to get cooked in it, and it's going to get oil spread over the top of it. So there's lots of oil in a focaccia. That's just the way it is. If you try making it healthier and take all that oil out, it won't be the same. It just won't be the same. So I'm going to wet my hand, reach in here, and I'm going to get this dough out. And you don't have to be super careful with it. I mean, you want to keep some of the air in there, but it's okay. We're going to press it all out anyway. So I have it in my pan. Once it's in there, get it a little oil covered, wet my hands again, and now I'm going to flip it over. So see, we have oil on both sides now, and I just literally push it out. Now, I'm not really dimpling it yet. We will be doing that. Right now, I'm just kind of stretching it out to the sides. If it doesn't go all the way, let it sit for 5 minutes, come back, it'll relax enough. But you see, this one's filling it just perfectly. That's exactly the way we want it to be. So right now, we have what looks like a focaccia, but it's not done yet because there's a thing called toppings that we have to contend with. And for this one, I'm going to use garlic and rosemary. So let me just set this to the side. You want this to rest for about 15 or 20 minutes. So while that's resting and while the oven's heating up, we'll get our toppings together. I like garlic, my wife likes garlic, and we're the ones that are going to be eating this focaccia. So, you know, a big clove of garlic like that would be really nice. And I thought, you know, 2 of them would be better, but 3. 3 is the number. So what I want to do is just cut off that little woody end. I don't want these to be too small because if I cut it too small, it'll burn when I cook it, right? So what I'm going to do is just give it a little slice across the middle and then chop them into pretty big chunks. And this is why people think focaccia is the precursor to pizza. It's not though. They're actually different things. And it's interesting. I did some research on this. They come from different sources. The closest thing to a pizza really is a pita. And the soldiers used to take pita bread and then they started putting cheese on it. And that became pizza. Whereas focaccia, they never really layered tomato sauces or cheeses on top of a focaccia. Now, what I like to do with these is infuse some oil. Now, I probably could have started this a little bit earlier and it would have been even stronger infusion, but it's okay because all this is going on in the bread anyway. So I'm just going to take my garlic and throw it into some olive oil. How much? That was, it's like 50 mil. It's about a quarter cup or so. It's not real important how much. Not a big deal. Then I'm going to take some rosemary. Now for rosemary, I'm just going to take some of these leaves right off. I don't really want the stems at all and just need some of the leaves. Rosemary just adds a great woody, piney note to it. It's also a classic ingredient on focaccia. Okay, so I want to get that in the oil, pack it down in there good, and get everything touching the oil, okay? If you wanted to make this oil a day before or a week before, go for it. It'll taste even better. Now, as I'm looking at this, I'm going, That is just not enough oil. We need more oil. There we go. Probably ended up with about 75 ml or maybe a quarter cup, a little over a quarter cup. And you want to just let that sit for a while, all right? So what's happening is our oven is heating up. Our bread is resting. Okay, so my oven's come to temp. This has been sitting for a few minutes. That's all we really need. So what I want to do now is get some of this stuff out and onto this focaccia. So I'm just going to reach in with my hands, get all oily. And a little bit of extra oil on this is not a problem. It's actually a good thing. I'm just going to spread it all around. You want it to be pretty even. You don't want too much on here. I mean, I have way more than I really need. So we're just going to do this. I'll get out my garlic. By the way, it smells incredible already, just with the few things we have here. Once you've done that, we dimple. And I am okay with some of these going into the dimples. So you'll get a little garlic inside the bread and all that kind of thing. All you do, I have oily hands now. Just boom, like that. Just pushing holes into the bread. That's all I'm doing. And what that does is it keeps it from rising too big. It also helps to keep some of the oil in little pockets, pushes some of the ingredients inside. It just works really, really nice. There we go, ready. This is going to go in the oven at 450 degrees for 23 minutes. Yes, I'm very specific about that because I've actually experimented. That's on my oven. I would start checking it at 18 minutes. You want a nicely browned top, but not too dark. All right, we'll see that in about 23 minutes. Okay, so while we're waiting on that last minute to 2 minutes of cooking for the focaccia, I just want to talk about that oil we made earlier. It smells like garlic and rosemary. You can totally make that earlier, and I usually do, but this time I just wanted to show you a quick and easy way in case you didn't have any preparation time and things like that. What's going to happen is when I take this out, we're going to pour this on really carefully. Alrighty, so there is our focaccia. I'm going to put the handle back on this just in case, because I have a tendency to just grab things and burn myself when I do that, and I don't really want to burn myself on television. Okay, we have our focaccia. Now what you want to do is get it out of here. But first, I want to pour my oil over the top. And like I said before, I'm literally just pouring it over. Just like that. What this does is it soaks into the bread, helps it to retain moisture, and it softens that crust just a little bit. Seems like a lot of oil, but don't worry, it's normal. Hear the little crackle? Take my little tiny spatula and I just go around the outside of it. You shouldn't have to do much. It shouldn't really stick because, you know, you oiled the pan, right? Usually towards the middle, I get like one little tiny piece that sticks. I don't know why. Okay, it's all loose. Out onto that. Put that there. And what I like to do is make like a little tent. I put this over the pan because, you know, some of that oil is going to drip a little bit. So you want to just, you know, make sure you catch it and don't get oil all over the place. But right now we have focaccia. Resist the urge to cut this open at this time. You really want that oil to soak in a little bit and you want this to cool. First, it's too hot to eat. You don't really want to eat it right now anyway. And second, it still has to finish doing the timey-wimey thing. You know, all the starches have to get congealed and stuff like that. So basically the bread has to set is all it is. So we give this maybe 20 minutes, 25 minutes, and then I can cut into it and I'll show you what it looks like. Okay, so it's been about 20 minutes or so. I don't want to let it cool too much longer. I'm starting to get really hungry. It smells amazing. So I'm just going to get it off of here. It's still warm, but it's not overly hot. I'll just go ahead and cut a little chunk off here. Oh, look at that. Hear that crunch? Now, something to note is look at the bottom. See, it's just got a little bit of crispiness to it. Look at the inside. Nice big holes. See some oil in there. Just cut off a little piece of this. And now I'm just going to take a bite because this looks amazing. You have the little bit of crunch on the top and a much crunchier bottom. The inside is just totally soft. It's like a sponge. See how it just bounces right back? That's amazing. The flavor is olive oil, bread, rosemary, a little bit of garlic in there. Believe it or not, the garlic didn't permeate the whole thing like you might think with the big chunks. I mean, I'm sure, you know, do like that. Put a big chunk on there. It's amazing. That's the easiest way to say it. What can you do with focaccia? Almost anything you can do with any other bread. You can cut this way, horizontally, make sandwiches out of it. You can cut them that way. You can even do different shapes, rolls, squares, however you like them. You can also just cut this up, serve it with your favorite meal. It goes great with everything. If you match the herbs and the toppings to the meal in a way that kind of marries them together, makes for a really nice thing. We do that with sauces a lot of the time, or like we served this with stew the other day, and I put sage on the focaccia to go with the sage in the stew. It just worked out really, really well. Oh, one more thing. If you're not sure what to do with this, if you have any left over, or, if you want to just make like a dozen of them in one day, you can freeze these, but don't ever put them in the refrigerator. They'll go stale almost instantly. Just put it in a little zip top bag or wrap it in some aluminum foil and plastic and stick it in the freezer. Good to go. So what are you waiting for? Go make some focaccia. As always, guys, thanks for watching. Have a great day.